How quickly do the tables turn in college basketball? Georgetown went to Rupp Arena and beat Kentucky by a final score of 84-70. And for as dominant as Kentucky was against Purdue, it basically went the opposite way in this one. And I want to start Georgetown before I get to Kentucky because coming into the season, I thought Georgetown brought in some good players. I wasn't sure how it would fit offensively, but I thought they had the makings for a good defensive team, especially bringing in a guy like KJ Lewis. And offensively, my concerns for them are still the same because they didn't really shoot the ball great from three in this one. I was worried about their spacing, but it didn't matter. They were able to execute really well out of the pick and roll in this one, led by Malik Mack, who is just really good. Setting up his teammates, but also getting his own shot, finding backdoor cut opportunities. They did a really good job of just using Kentucky's aggressiveness at times, but also just lack of off-ball awareness. And he did a really good job of finding backdoor cuts. And then they're running KJ Lewis around like pin down screens, which is something in the 2 years at Arizona you would have never really seen them run, and a lot of them were run for him to shoot mid-range jumpers, which again is not something you'd seen a lot from him in the past, especially plays designed for KJ Lewis. And makes sense. Arizona had a lot of good offensive weapons, but this is a big shift for him. I'm curious if this is going to be something that continues because he was phenomenal in this game against Kentucky, and his defense was still really good, super aggressive defender, deflections, physicality. He was excellent on that end of the court. And then lastly, I thought it was a three-headed attack really for this Georgetown team. Vince Iwuchukwu, who's on his third school, the transfer from St. John's who started with USC, he looked really good. He gave Kentucky's bigs a lot of issues. He honestly missed a lot of shots inside that I thought were makeable. All right, defensively for Iwuchukwu, I mean, he was part of the collective for Georgetown, and it just gave them a lot of good energy. They had other guys who contributed to their win, but it was really those three guys that I felt like made a difference, and then the rest of the team chipped in here and there and played really good defense. A really big win for Coach Cooley at Kentucky. Now for the Wildcats, look, I came away thoroughly impressed with their defense after they beat Purdue, and they really limited Purdue's offensive attack. In this one, their defense really struggled. And some of it was, look, they didn't have Denzel Aberdeen, which I thought was a big part of the defensive success against Purdue. Having the two big 6'4", 6'5" guards with Owe and Aberdeen, I really felt like made a big impact. Having Colin Chandler in there, he's not a point guard. And I think having him play out of position, I think he's a guy who can be a good defender, but I think having him guard Malik Mack wasn't the best. Now, I think really, though, what hurt Kentucky more than anything defensively was their offense. They shot around 33% from the field in this one, 7 of 30 from 3, and there was just a lot of opportunities for Georgetown to get out and run off of missed shots. Now, it wasn't entirely in transition. That's important to note. Georgetown did a lot of damage as well in the half court. And look, missing Aberdeen hurts for sure. And they expect him to be back soon. So I don't think this is going to be something that continues. But I think we saw where some areas where Kentucky's going to struggle. And it brings you back to last year where Kentucky, they beat some teams, some great teams. They beat Duke in Florida, albeit before those teams really hit their strides, in fairness to those two teams. But they would also lose games, against teams that they should have beat. They lost that home game against Arkansas when Arkansas was not playing very well. They lost the game at Georgia. There was just games over the season where Kentucky proved they could beat the best of the best, but they also didn't beat these like middling teams that were tournament teams, but not the best of them for sure. And so that's one thing. The other thing I noticed throughout this game was shot selection, particularly Cam Williams and Jasper Johnson, I didn't think took the greatest shots. And some of that is attributed to they didn't have a point guard out there, so there wasn't somebody kind of setting up the offense. But there was a lot of quick shots, especially with Jasper. I know he shot the ball really well in the first game against Purdue, but there was a couple in particular where he shot quick shots that were long twos, and those are two things that aren't going to be what I am sure what Coach Pope is looking for the Wildcats. I'm sure they're going to rebound and play better than this, and this is probably a wake-up call for them. But when things got tough, there was a couple of guys who stood out to me, Diabate and Owe, who were stepping up to the challenge. Will they get more from that? With Aberdeen, I think so. Colin Chandler, I think, will play better, and he's not asked to be the point guard. He did have 11 points. He did draw 6 fouls, but he had 5 turnovers and only 3 assists. It was just tough for him to be that table setter, and I just don't think that's his designed role. And then lastly, the three-point shooting was something coming into the season, which was a concern of mine in these two games. Even the game they won against Purdue, 9 of 29 from 3, okay. And then in this one, 7, what was it? Where they finished? 7 of 30. They didn't make a 3 in the second half. And I know, some people will say, well, they missed shots, that sometimes it's part of the game. You miss shots that you otherwise could have made. But I didn't love the shot selection as a totality. And so I think as much as I was high on them after their win against Purdue, you have to bring it back some certainly after this loss against Georgetown. A team who I do think, though, is going to push to be in the top 25 certainly at some point in this year. So I think, in summary, after Kentucky's first 2 exhibition games, their only 2 exhibition games, I should say, not quite as high as I thought after the Purdue game, and probably not as low as people may be after this Georgetown game. So I think it's going to be fun to watch both these teams. I'm excited for Georgetown, they haven't been what they used to be. And I think Coach Cooley has really been building this program. I was a bit concerned with the amount of guys they lost off of last year's team, but it seems like he brought in the right transfers to do what he wants to do, have a really defensive-oriented team. And then you've got Mack and Lewis as your focal points offensively. If Iwuchukwu can continue to do what he did, that's going to be a real plus for them. And then for Kentucky, can they find the balance between three-point shooting and defense, especially once they get Aberdeen and Lowe back? It remains to be seen when Jaden Quaidance is going to be back. It went from he's progressing and going to be back earlier than people think, maybe even the start of the season, to now, I was listening to the broadcast, and he's going to be back at some point this season. So I'm really not sure when they expect him to be back. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Until next time, peace.